It's time for the news.
The Algerian diplomacy chief Ahmed Attaf is on an official visit to the Central African Republic in his capacity as special envoy of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. Several foreign activists and supporters taking part in the International Conference on Solidarity with the Sahrawi People held in Boujdour in the Sahrawi refugee camps have called on the international community to take up its responsibility towards the Sahrawi cause. At least 7 Palestinians have been killed and several others have been wounded in new airstrikes carried out by the Israeli army against several parts of the Gaza Strip. Those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. The Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, International Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, is on an official visit to the Central African Republic in his capacity as Special Envoy of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. This visit comes as part of joint efforts to give a new impetus to the relations between the two countries, as well as coordination and consultation on the main challenges at the African level on ways and means to address them ahead of upcoming continental events. During his visit, the Algerian diplomacy chief is to meet the President of the Central African Republic, Mr. Faustin Archange Touadéra, to hand him a letter from President Abdelmajid Tebboune. Mr. Attaf would also have a working session with the Central African Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Sylvie Baipo-Temon. The Secretary of State to the Foreign Affairs in charge of African Affairs, Mrs. Bakhta Selma Mansouri, has met with the President of Liberia, Mr. Joseph Nyouma, in the capital, Monrovia. During the meeting, the Secretary of State handed in a letter from President Abdelmajid Tebboune to the Liberian President, Mr. Joseph Nyouma, and expressed Algeria's desire to strengthen the relations of friendship and cooperation with Liberia. For his part, the Liberian President praised the bilateral relations linking the two countries, as well as Algeria's distinguished position at the African level. The meeting was also an opportunity to discuss bilateral relations and issues of common concern. The Secretary of State for the Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Mr. Sofiane Chaib, has received the President of the Algerian Economic Renewal Council, Mr. Kamel Moula. The meeting provided an opportunity to discuss the most effective ways of involving members of our national community abroad in the country's economic development and renewal process as part of the implementation of the guidelines laid down by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, who has reiterated his appeal to the President of our community, to the children of our community, to invest in the homeland. And now several foreign activists and supporters taking part in the International Conference in Solidarity with the Sahrawi People held in Boujdour in the Sahrawi refugee camps have called on the international community to take up its responsibilities towards the Sahrawi cause. The International Conference in Solidarity with the Sahrawi People brings together human rights defenders in solidarity with the Sahrawi cause from 13 countries, including Algeria, Palestine, Sweden, Germany, Spain, Japan, Italy, Colombia, Croatia, Chile, the United States of America, Portugal, and Lithuania. The participant will have the opportunity to hold meetings with Sahrawi leaders of the Polisario Front and to visit a number of Sahrawi structures and administrations in order to see at first hand the suffering of the Sahrawi people. In the same vein, the permanent representative of the Polisario Front and coordinator with MINURSO, Sidi Mohamed Omar, had shed light on the situation of the Sahrawi cause at the United Nations. On the sideline of the Western Sahara Annual Conference on Foreign Relations, Sidi Mohamed Omar said one of the greatest achievements of the level of the United Nations is on continued recognition of the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination that was achieved thanks to the sacrifices, struggles, and resistance of the Sahrawi people. The Sahrawi diplomat stressed that the position of the UN is consistent and has been recently reiterated by the UN General Assembly in its resolution adopted on December 4th last year, which reaffirmed that the question of Western Sahara remains a question of decolonization. Regarding the dealing of the Security Council with the Sahrawi cause, the Sahrawi officials said the situation remains the same in the face of the stubbornness of the Moroccan occupying power and its refusal to move towards a fair and lasting solution. Let's recall that the annual Conference on Foreign Relations is being held for 3 days to make an assessment of Sahrawi diplomatic action in light of reports from Sahrawi missions and representations abroad, as well as the political and diplomatic dynamics that the Sahrawi coast benefits from today. The representative of the Polisario Front to the United Nations and coordinator with the United Nations mission for the referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, Mr. Sidi Mohammed Omar, has confirmed in the province of Bujdur that the United Nations still considers the Western Sahara issue as a case of decolonization. The Sahrawi diplomat said in a comment to the press on the sidelines of the International Conference of Solidarity with the Sahrawi people that the recognition of the Western Sahara issue as a case of decolonization is a significant achievement for the Sahrawi people, and that this right has come through the sacrifices, resistance and struggle of the Sahrawi people. He added that the UN-led peace process in Western Sahara has been completely paralyzed by Morocco's obstruction, which is always keen to consolidate the colonial situation in the occupied territories of the Sahrawi Democratic Arab Republic. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. At least 7 Palestinians have been killed and several others have been wounded in new airstrikes carried out by the Israeli army against several parts of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli attacks mainly targeted the refugee camps of El Bureij and Nusayrat in the central part of Gaza, as well as the southern town of Rafah, raising to over 45,000 the number of Palestinians killed so far. The Israeli army has intensified its operations in Gaza, targeting the enclave's vital infrastructure and health facilities, thus exacerbating the dire humanitarian crisis. This came as the Palestinian National Council today warned against the repercussions of the Israeli decision to ban UNRWA due to come into effect by the end of this month. It denounced the decision as a serious escalation affecting the Palestinian refugees, particularly in the Gaza Strip, who are already confronted to a suffocating siege for more than 15 months amid famine and a disastrous deterioration of the humanitarian situation. It pointed out that banning UNRWA would deprive millions of Palestinian refugees from basic services, including medical care, education, food relief, urging the international community to take up its moral and humanitarian responsibility. The Palestinian National Council stressed that the Israeli move was part of a systematic policy aimed at liquidating the Palestinian refugees issued through ethnic cleansing, genocide, and the forced displacement in violation of international law and relevant UN resolutions. Meanwhile, negotiations are underway in Doha, Qatar, to try and secure a long-awaited ceasefire in Gaza. The negotiating process, which resumed 2 days ago, have so far stumbled over Israel's intransigence to stop its war on the Palestinian territory. Referring to the negotiations, the representative of the Palestinian Hamas movement in Algeria, Youssef Hamdan, said he was optimistic as to the conclusion of an agreement.
Yesterday and the day before, we reached clear and broad outlines in the last round of negotiations, which started from the agreement of the end of last May and the one reached later last July, and then the previous agreements. There will be a phased-out approach to implement the agreement, starting with a first phase that includes the release of a number of hostages who are in the hands of the resistance. There is a request from the occupying authorities to include a group of captive soldiers, whether men or women, of specific ages. The negotiations are still underway yesterday and today to assess the details of the withdrawal, which the occupying authorities seems to have approved. However, there are terms that refer to crowded areas. We want to demarcate these areas and to reach an agreement that regulates the behavior of both parties. We are coordinating with our Qatari and Egyptian brothers to define the form of this agreement.
He said the presence at the same time of the delegation was unprecedented.
وجود الوفدين الوفد الفلسطيني وفد حركة حماس.
The presence of the two delegations, the Palestinian delegation and Hamas movement, and the occupying authorities delegation in Cairo at the same time when negotiations are taking place is unprecedented. This is an indication of the seriousness of the two parties to reach an agreement this time. We are handling all of these preparations and issues that are raised before us with seriousness and responsibility. I believe that the indicators suggest that an agreement is close to being reached. The matter, again, depends on Benjamin Netanyahu and his temperament to reach an agreement. We will try to corner the occupying authorities. We are showing great flexibility, and we are handling the issue with seriousness and responsibility to reach an agreement, which we hope will be soon.
That was the representative of the Palestinian Hamas movement, Shishef Hamdan. The world is observing today the World Day of War Orphans to raise awareness about the plight of war orphans amid the pursuit of Israel's brutal and unmerciful war on Gaza, deliberately targeting children and women. More details in this report by Asya Bakar.
The World Day of War Orphans is an occasion to address the issues and pathetic conditions faced by children in war zones. The UNICEF said the impact of armed conflicts on children around the world reached devastating levels, and over 473 million children, more than 1 in 6 globally, now live in areas affected by conflicts, with the world experiencing the highest number of conflicts since World War II. The percentage of the world's children living in conflict zones has doubled from around 10% in the 1990s to almost 90% today. By the end of 2023, approximately 47.2 million children had been displaced due to conflict and violence. Trends in 2024 indicate further displacement as conflicts intensify, particularly in occupied Palestinian territories, Sudan, Lebanon, Haiti, and Myanmar. The UNICEF said children represent 30% of the global population, yet they make up roughly 40% of the global refugee population and 49% of internally displaced people. The UNICEF Executive Director, Catherine Russell, said by almost every measure, 2024 has been one of the worst years on record for children in conflict in UNICEF's history, both in terms of the number of children affected and the level of impact on their lives. Russell pointed out that a child growing up in a conflict zone is far more likely to be out of school, malnourished, or forced from their home, too often repeatedly, compared to a child living in places of peace. She said this must not be the new normal, and the world cannot allow a generation of children to become collateral damage to the world's unchecked wars.
With this last piece of news comes the end of our news bulletin. Stay tuned on Radio Algeria International.
Hello and welcome to our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. First in the news, the agriculture sector enjoyed exceptional momentum in 2024 thanks to the multiplication of initiatives and the launch of several strategic projects aimed at increasing national production, particularly in the cereals and dairy sectors, in order to strengthen food security and improve the country's self-sufficiency. These initiatives and projects carried out in different regions of the country demonstrate the public authorities' determination to develop this vital sector, which has managed to guarantee the availability of agricultural products despite the challenges of recent years. With a value generated of $37 billion, agriculture is the second largest contributor to GDP after hydrocarbons and remains one of the most important economic sectors providing employment. The state has deployed considerable resources to support this activity, notably through a series of incentive measures. The Minister of Finance, Laziz Said, has co-chaired a coordination meeting in Algiers with the High Commissioner for Digitization, Mariam Ben Mouloud, to monitor the digitization activities of the National Domain and Tax Departments, according to a ministry press release. This meeting, which took place in the presence of executives from the Ministry and the High Commission for Digitization, is part of the strengthening of the digital transformation dynamic and the achievement of global digitization objectives, the same source said. At the start of the meeting, the Finance Minister recalled the significant achievements made in the digital transformation of the finance sector, pointing out that the process is still ongoing and requires a sustained effort to achieve the objectives. The Minister of Tourism and Handicrafts, Houriya Middahi, has chaired a coordination meeting with the sector's executives devoted to assessing Algeria's participation in the 28th edition of the International Crafts Show in Milan, Italy, as guest of honor for the African continent, as well as the preparations underway for the participation of the tourism and crafts sector in the Expo 2025 World Exhibition in Osaka, Kansai, Japan, the ministry said in a statement. Mrs. Middahi stressed the importance of representing Algeria at such international events given their economic, cultural and promotional dimensions for Algeria as a tourist destination. More in our program. Since its launch by public banks in 2020, Islamic finance in Algeria has developed positively, with deposits exceeding 817 billion dinars at the end of September 2024, according to Mouhand Bouray, chairman of the Association of Banks and Financial Establishments. Mouhand Bouray told APS that the marketing by public banks of Islamic finance products has contributed to financing the national economy, noting that deposits have increased to over 817 billion dinars between 2020 and September 2024, while financing granted under this formula has exceeded 437 billion dinars for companies and over 68 billion for individuals. The national airline company Air Algérie has received a certificate of recognition from the Saudi National Center for Passenger Safety, the company said in a statement. Air Algérie obtained a score of 98% in the 2024 annual assessment of air carriers based on compliance with the standards set by the Saudi Center. This recognition reflects the national airline's commitment to respecting passenger safety and security standards, it added. And to wrap it up, Air Algérie has announced in a press release the reinforcement of its domestic flight schedule with 34 new weekly flights from 1st February 2025. The new flights will make it possible to add a total of 3,588 additional seats, said the same source, underlining that this reinforcement will concern various national destinations, which will offer customers more choice and greater flexibility in planning their trips. This measure is part of the authorities' policy aimed at strengthening air connectivity between the different regions of the country and improving the services offered to citizens, the airline added in its press release. And with this, we come to the end of our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. Take care and bye-bye for now.
Welcome to your weekly program, Destination Algeria. I'm Jamel Semeni. There are a number of great destinations in Algeria just waiting to be discovered. A curious mixture of cultures and influences, Algeria has something interesting to see in just about every city. The country is also the first largest on the African continent, so you can be sure that there are plenty of towns and cities to visit. Let's visit Algeria's fascinating destinations, you and I, together. Considered as a branch of anthropology, archaeology is broadly defined as a study of humanity and human societies. Archaeologists put in a lot of time and effort uncovering relics of the past that either prove and extend what is already known about the development of societies in various countries, or in revealing aspects of human history that have previously not been known. Algeria is a treasure trove of evidence indicating human occupation of this North African region, going back to the Paleolithic and Neolithic eras. Archaeological discoveries of note include a significant number of megalithic monuments in the Great Atlas region and Meshresfa Peninsula of Algeria, not too far from Jelfa and Tiaret. Megaliths are large stone structures believed to have been built in the Neolithic era. These monumental structures were put together without using any type of mortar, and it is generally unclear as to what purpose they served. Stonehenge in the United Kingdom is readily recognized as being the most famous example of megaliths. The shoal mounds of the Capsian culture discovered in the Maghreb region, which includes Algeria, date back to the Mesolithic era. The manner in which the Capsians buried their dead suggests that they had a belief in the afterlife. Decorative items, ostrich eggshell beads, and seashell beads were used to make necklaces and other decorative items. Although no consensus has been reached as to their origins, linguistic historians believe that Capsians feature in the ancestry of Berber-speaking North Africans. At the time, the Capsian people roamed the area, likely between 8000 BC and 4000 BC. It was believed to have been a savanna region rich in wildlife. This is supported by cave paintings found in a number of places, including Tassili, Niger, located in the north of Tamanrasset. Moreover, flints from the Paleolithic era have been discovered in a number of places, including Kolea in Algeria's Tipaza province and the Tlemcen province. Of special note to those interested in archaeology and history are the mausoleums of Medrassen near Betna and Jidars south of Tiaret. The former established as the tomb of Berber Numidian king Imedrassen, who ruled between 300 and 200 BC, with the latter consisting of a group of 13 mausoleums likely constructed between the 300 to 600 of our Common Era. There are also numerous reminders of Roman rule to be found in Algeria, with fascinating ruins, monuments, and archaeological sites to explore. Certainly, Algeria has a lot to offer to those willing to scratch beneath the surface, and visitors will appreciate the work that archaeologists have done in investigating the distant past of this intriguing North African country. In the second part of our weekly broadcast Destination Algeria, we invite you to discover the ancient Berber kingdom of Numidia, existed between 202 BC and 46 BC in what is now Algeria and part of modern-day Tunisia, North Africa. Mohammed Barazwan will tell you more in this report.
With a sparkling Mediterranean Sea to its north and the unforgiving Sahara Desert to the south, Numidia had the Roman-ruled province of Mauritania on its western border and the province of Africa, which was also under Roman rule, to the east. Although the ancient kingdom of Numidia is no longer in existence, evidence of its history can be found in the area. The people of Numidia, referred to as Numidians, were made up of two tribal groups, with the Masili located in the west and the Masili in the east. During the Second Punic War, also known as the War against Hannibal, 2018 BC, 201 BC, the Numidians were split by tribe in their allegiance with the opposing groups. Under the King Gala, the Masili formed an alliance with Carthage, with the Masili supporting their king Syphax in an alliance with Rome. When Gala was replaced by Massinissa as king of the Masili, he changed his allegiance with Rome, with Syphax of the Masili falling in with the Carthaginians. The Romans proved to be victorious and awarded the conquered territory of Numidia to their ally Massinissa of the Masili. The territory remained in the family when, after the death of Massinissa, his son Micipsa took control. Upon his death in 118 BC, Micipsa's two sons, Himpsal I and Ardebal, along with the legitimate grandson of Massinissa, Jugurtha, began a battle for control. Jugurtha had Himpsal assassinated, leading to open war between Jugurtha and Ardebal, with the latter looking to Rome for assistance when beaten in battle. Roman officials attempted to settle the dispute by dividing the territory in two, assigning the western section to Jugurtha and the remainder of Numidia to Ardebal. Peace was temporary, however, and the conflict between the two adversaries soon resumed, this time with the Romans being dragged into it. Following a protracted battle, Jugurtha was eventually taken to Rome as a captive in chains. Following his death, the region changed hands numerous times until eventually being incorporated into Roman territory during the rule of the legendary Julius Caesar. The capital city at the time was Cirta, now modern-day Constantine, renamed after Roman Emperor Constantine the Great, who reunited the split province on Numidia. In addition to Constantine, formerly Cirta, cities in modern Algeria that date back to the time of Numidia include the port of Skikda, formerly Rusicada, Annaba, formerly Hipporegius, and Tebessa, formerly Tevest. The territory is studded with evidence of Roman influence in the former remains of buildings and settlements, as well as superbly constructed roads that gave the Romans the advantage in many a battle for power in the past.
With this, we come to the end of our weekly program.